I do that all the time, but my verbose introduction aside, which is perfectly fine, it would be nice to record this so we can actually point it to other people that may be interested. So if you hit the recording session,
Yep.
then I think we'll get underway.
Well, thanks, Tim, and I'm delighted to be here, not very far from anywhere, but the fact that there are so many people online, so to speak, is quite remarkable. It would be absolutely wonderful if we could be together, and but that's not the case. And I can say this is and to meet for a Zoom poetry reading. Well, I can tell you two things. It's first for me, and it's maybe a first for you. So first, I'd like to have a couple thank yous. I want to thank Ruth Lovell Stanners for those lovely little vignettes that you actually produced and I had the privilege of sending out. We were going to display them at first, but we decided maybe this was the better form. So thank you, Ruth. And she's very shy, even though she was the mayor of Owen Sound. I wanted her to be my MC, but she says she's not that comfortable, which I don't believe. But thank you, Ruth. I also want to say thanks to Susan Edwards, better known to some of us from Owen Sound, including Morrison and Sue, as Mrs. Connell. She was my high school teacher and, quite frankly, responsible for introducing me to poetry and a wide range of literature, which had quite a profound effect on me. I'd also like to say hello to Carrie McPherson from Los Angeles, originally from the Maritimes, my fellow cloud poet. She, in fact, did the first poem, Zoom poem reading, and introduced her book, um, The Ecstatic Orphan. And that was great to hear her and to meet her. And of course, then I want to say hello to everybody. And I've got quite the eclectic and diverse range of people on the line from east to west, Americans, Canadians. Some of you know me through business. I have some fellow directors on boards in which I serve. Some of you know me through uh, through track, and I've got both track friends from my hometown, Morrison Reed, through Villanova. I don't know if anyone has joined yet. Ed Tackett's a very dear friend of mine. Jim Dennison, Ross Monroe, a good friend that we met when we were 17, and he lives here in Edmonton. We've become great friends. And then, of course, I have friends in many places, Calgary, across Edmonton, and finally across the country, and finally family. I have several sisters on the line, my brother, of course, and my two granddaughters are actually on the line, and I think my son with his three little boys may join sooner or later. So you all know me in different ways, and some of you may know me simply as Vi Becker's husband. Uh, so that still gets a laugh when I introduce myself because Vi was so well known in Edmonton before I came along, and people were saying, "Who the hell is this guy hanging out with Vi Becker?" So here we are, and ready to go on Zoom. So I'd like to start by just giving a little context. And Tim alluded to this, and you're going to see how this weaves through a number of poems and narratives. And this is what I call early reflections. I grew up on a farm in rural Ontario, just north of the small village of Leith. Our farm had a special beauty, distinguished by a cut granite house built by Scottish masons. It overlooked the surrounding countryside. We could see for miles. We could see the ships coming into the bay and heading for the Owen Sound harbor. And when they departed, heading for ports unknown, we could see the clouds coming in and the change in weather before we could actually feel it. We could see the endless array of fantastic sunsets as the sun settled in the lands across the bay to the west. It never got tiring, and we had a wood stove in our kitchen. Leith and the surrounding area was a magical place to grow up. Located on the shores of the blue waters of Georgian Bay, adorned by lush forests full of maples and beech trees, bounded by two creeks replete with rainbow trout and the mystery of running waters disappearing into the upstream woods, and blessed with deep, rich loam soils that produced hardy crops year after year. Our experiences and our imaginations were full. Leith itself is perhaps best known as the early home and final resting place of Canada's most famous painter, Tom Thomson. And tonight we have Betty Gray, who actually lives on the Thomson farm across the road, literally from the Leith Church. A plaque honoring his name was situated near our rural schoolhouse. It became part of us. We imagined in some way that we were connected to this famous artist who became an everyday part of our lives. And so each of us, in our own way, became artists. So I'm going to start by reading 3 poems, and then I'm going to comment on where that came from, or where these poems came from. So my first one is called Pilers of Wood.
Is that a book there, Mama?
We are few, we pilers of wood, who saw then split the straighter limbs and sweat as men once could. We are strong, we hunters of wood, who eye then mark our target trees, our noble task well understood. Alas, our wood can no more match that grandeur of gas and oil, but those have lost forevermore the joys of piling wood. We have seen the flickering sun through dying leaves and naked limbs and felt the cold winds come. We have shaped these forest trails that lead us to our place of toil, where now the squirrels run. Our stacks of wood now wait the call of winter's desperate chill. Our stoves be full, our hearts be warm, from joys of piling wood. So then I'm going to go to another poem called Counting Cattle, and this is something
This is one I like.
actually had to do. We had a really good farm, but next to the farm was this pretty rough piece of land where this creek that I referred to ran through in a diagonal manner, and it was rough and hilly and grown up with thorn trees, and we would just turn out our heifers and our dry cows there. And after every thunderstorm, Father would say, we better go count those cattle, and off I'd be sent. So here we go. Father sent me out today to see if all the head were still together, alive and well, I mean. You think it would be easy to find them, all 31. It's just 100 acres plus of hills and trees and shaded creek, more hills and trees. Where are those bloody beasts? Don't they know? Just show their heads. I'll count them quick beyond my way. But then again, if they knew what men can do, I, like them, would hide then too. What now? The creek, which last week raged in the wake of a summer storm and left me seeking for a fallen tree to cross, now trickles like a leaky eave. Oh, damn, I've been this way, not once, no, even twice before. I'll circle round and search the knoll where forlorn cedars and sumacs grow. There's one white head, that's all I need. I'll count them quick and do my deed. No news today, I've got to go. This prince of dreams has thoughts to think and dreams to sow. So, and then one last poem, as Tim has alluded, I headed off to Philadelphia, Villanova University at the age of 17, and would come back in the summertime and a rural area, and I would go back in my normal runs in the countryside. And I remember going by this farm one day, and all of a sudden there was a no trespassing sign on it. It says, good God, who puts up a no trespassing sign in a rural area? And so I wrote this, and I was very much influenced by Robert Frost, and I'd liked the rhythm of his poem, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, whose woods these are, I do not know. His house is in the village, though. So I used that same sort of cadence, and I wrote this. What means the sign so rudely placed in bold black ink, in glass encased? What ails these fields that once bore grain, which weeds and thorns have now replaced? It was the best farm on the line, her haylofts bulged, her crops were fine. Now empty barns store cold winds wail, and spreads the gloom beyond the sign. The land now knows another breed, their hands are clean, they do not seed. They call this farm their country place, to cries of spring they pay no heed. A heart that fears a stranger's hand once had no place in rural land. A heart that loves, no signs demand. A heart that loves, no signs demand. So you're probably thinking, oh, where the heck did these poems come from? And I can tell you, I refer this to sort of a creative cognitive dissonance that I experienced in going from this rural environment to the main line in Philadelphia, going to school at Villanova, and it was so different. Everything was so different. There wasn't a straight road to be found there. As you know, in rural Ontario, everything is straight and square. There are big trees everywhere. You couldn't see very far. There were wealthy estates. There were gatehouses. There were stables. There was wealth and opulence that I'd never seen before. And not only that, here I am, this farm boy Protestant in a totally Catholic environment. of upper middle class Catholics that came from New Jersey and New York and Delaware and Pennsylvania. And I think one day, it was what, my second or third year at university, I'm walking through campus and a tree was being cut and there was some wood piled to the side. And I thought, gee, I can relate to that. And that triggered the pilers of wood. And then I sort of got onto a roll and I thought, well, I'll try some more. And I was into Robert Frost at the time, and that's when No Trespassing came out. And then the Counting Cattle, that was pretty easy to write because that's exactly what we did. So I'm going to read a couple more from that period, and then we're going to move on. But here's one, and this again is from an actual physical experience working with my father in the fence lines. And back in the 60s, it was very popular to remove those fences. A lot of elm trees at the time that were dying. You'll recall the Dutch elm disease ravaged the countryside in Ontario, and we had to take those trees out. And so here's a poem called Glowing Embers. I walked the fence line and jolt in full surprise to see the stump where I and father had 6 weeks prior exposed this mass to wind and fire, with netted brush to clear the line, now smoldering still. It shook my being that this former stump, now glowing embers, though through relentless waves of wind and water, with no intent to endure or point to make, could speak with such clear measure to the dying embers in my heart, still smoldering, but nearly out. One of the things we had the joys of doing in the early days was actually walk to school. And I remember clearly, I have a sister, Frances. I'm not sure if she's on the line. She was 11 months older than me. So we were, for all intents and purposes, Irish twins. She was born in December. I was born in November. She started school a year ahead of me. I followed, and then I was half the class. And the other half wasn't really too bright. So they moved me up to her class, and we were actually in grades right from grade 3 on together. But I remember clearly one day when I was about 5 years of age walking to school, and this is before we moved to Leith. This is the farm my parents rented near Walters Falls, near Bognor, where Morrison Reed is from. So this is called Road to School. The road led me through woods when young, and I knew only out and back, a road that seemed to move and shimmer, bathing in the morning sun, dancing with the vivid shadows, embraced by the trembling orange of a warm summer's close. But I pressed on to learn my 2 + 2 and more, much more, though in the wakening of my day, that road which led me beyond the weathered holes and dust, while through the dying green and sky were billowing shapes of black and gray and white, pursued the sun. Or was the sun in pursuit of them? I did not know which moved the most. And now in places far away, that road remains a fading memory of a distant past. I pause and sigh like those silent fields that had given up their alms, now resting in that morning sun. Remembering roads behind, roads beneath, and roads yet unknown, but none so clear as that first road to school. And that was an actual experience that I remember clearly at the age of 5, would have been probably October of that year. Then we moved to Leith, and when we, again, I would walk with my sisters to school. It was me and my 3 sisters. And when we came to Leith, the road that ran from Leith to our laneway actually had a bend in it. And then I always kind of liked the bend. And then one day, all of a sudden, there was all kinds of equipment. And before I knew it, the road was completely straightened out and the bend was gone. And I never thought too much about it, but I was on this roll writing some poetry. And I thought, I remember that. I'll write a poem called The Bend Removed. So here it goes. I miss you, Bend, how I longed each day to greet you to and fro from school. But you are gone now, our forefathers who built you so to curve so ever gently around the stately maple that 3 men abreast with arms outstretched could not in full embrace. And alongside it, you spared the homely clump of cedars standing like forgotten women, cradling bundles of snow in their arms, the dead of winter now gone. You'll never know how far it seems now, walking to and fro from school. You, Bend, once meant halfway home. But now all I see is a long straight road, with no relief or pause. Why did you succumb to the howls of chainsaws and mighty iron wheels that squeezed your life away? Will the few seconds gained by the loss of your sweeping form ever replace the grace of your inherent gentle nature?
Is that better, Mom?
I miss you, Bend. I'm going to read just a couple more. Hopefully everybody's hearing okay. I hear the odd.
Jerry, can I just interject here?
Sure.
You know, going back to your initial comments on the farm and the area that you have, you know, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and your words are fabulous. Would you have any pictures of that?
Well, I do, and if you look in the background, Sandy, you'll see a painting of the Scottish stone house, and this is what my sister actually painted many years ago, and this was in response to my poem Counting Cattle. This is what I would have seen coming back.
Great.
So, but I will get some pictures to you, Sandy.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, Jerry. I mean, your words make it sound so beautiful.
I would love to see it. It's. I have to say, Sandy, I've traveled and lived many places, but Owen Sound is very special.
Yeah,
it's very special.
All right, I'd love some pictures, Jerry.
So I'm going to read a couple more and then turn it back to Tim for a couple of minutes. This is it's called A Run in the Country on a Winter's Night. And I've always had this sort of sensation. I always loved the evening, especially in wintertime, starting November, December, when it starts getting dark around 4:30, and there's this quietness that overcomes you, and slowly the light slips away and you're left in darkness. But it's almost like a comforting blanket coming over you. And so this is Run in the Country on a Winter's Night. There's nothing like a run in the country on a cold winter's night, setting out when every fiber of your being recoils and begs to stay in the shelter of that warm kitchen. No, but go you must, to chase those dreams yet far away as the last glimpse of the diminishing light shudders and turns to gray, fading in the dying remnants of the day. Quickly you're overcome in silence, shadows, and the gathering darkness, dark clouds above, looming, greeted by the occasional lunar glimpse that pierces the frozen solitude, broken by sounds of breath and steps, the steady rhythm that brings the only warmth to be found. And run you must, not really understanding why, knowing somewhere in some time, those dreams, though hazy and gray, will lead to that brighter day. I'm going to finish with two poems here that really speak to one of the things I've always been fascinated with is the change of season and the change of light and how the light changes during the day. And I do have a whole series called the Time of Day series. And I also have another series, which I won't be really reading much from, called the Change of Seasons series. But I'm going to start with a poem called Dawn. And I wrote this at a low point in my life. That's PV, pre-Vi. For those of you who know Vi and probably appreciate what I'm saying. And this is called Dawn. And this actually took place in Calgary. And I got up early one morning. We were living for a short period of time in the west end of Calgary, overlooking where the Olympic Park is. And you could see for miles. And it was one of those mornings where it was dark, but you know, the sun was coming up. And so here's Dawn. She stirs gently, piercing the black horizon. The darkness there too long gathers, begins to slip away. I rise up and look again. I see it's not the same. Colors that I've never seen before, and shapes. Emerging, chasing, pursuing the brightening sky. I stand now transfixed by the symphony of light and sound and color. I've been here before, or have I? I ask myself and think again, pressing forward to greet her, breathless, trembling, wondering, waiting, embracing. Behold, a brand new day. So that was there was a fantastic morning, but also I was coming out of a dark period, and you can see that's a metaphor for a brightening sky. And then I'm going to read Early Morning, which actually goes back to coming back on a run back in Leith in about June, when the nature and the growth is at its peak. And I remember this morning coming up the laneway, and this is early morning. There's something about the early morning that grabs and steals your heart. Perhaps it is the freshness. Yes, that's it. The gentle smells rise up from sleeping hills and knolls to softly nudge your senses. But then again, the glistening of the dewdrops dancing across their leafy stage with no mistake in the meadow and on the apple blossoms cannot be missed. There's that smell again. I soak it in and try to hold and feel the morning coolness. I shiver ever so slightly. The sun now rising, a lighter shade of red, smiles and begins to plan its day. Today, it will be a hot one. I think of toil and sweat ahead, the many hours, but that smell draws me back. The waft of blossom and fresh cut hay jolts my senses yet again. I smile and am reminded how much I love early morning.
Jerry,
Yes,
Jerry, Hubert here.
Hubert.
I just want to comment that your previous poem, you know, you gave me that the book just as I was going through my dark period last year, and it really helped, like that imagery and the you know, when I was in my darkness, I can see that there will be light and so the couple poems you had back to back, it really made a difference. So I wanted to thank you for that that gift, and that really made a difference in my life at that time. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Hubert. And I tell most of my friends, and I know there are many of you and some of you younger ones that are going through difficult times. I think between Vi and I, there's nothing much we haven't gone through. So don't be afraid to give us a call or rest on our shoulder if you would so choose. So you're probably wondering where the name Beyond the Woodshed come from. And we have some very ogres as parents who would beat us up behind the woodshed? Well, not at all. Nothing to do with that. And I can tell you, we had 2 woodsheds on the farm, one a little further away than the one closest to the kitchen. And one of my tasks as a young boy was to keep the woodshed closest to the stove, well supplied with cut wood. This meant moving wood on a regular basis from the larger storage shed to the one near the kitchen. It was tedious work. I did not mind the work, but while my hands and feet were in constant motion, my imagination was even busier. It never stopped. I was in a perpetual state of being beyond the woodshed. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of that. I'm often beyond the woodshed, as some of my fellow business colleagues and friends and directors are wondering where I'm coming from, because I often bring a different perspective on things. So I'm going to read a poem called On Consciousness. I think we all struggle with life, the meaning of life, where we're coming from, where we're going, what's it all about. So I'm struggling with the concept of consciousness as I am increasingly conscious of my own consciousness. It grows in mysticism and mystery. Are we assigned our own measured portion that begins upon our birth, confined to our own physicality, and ends with our demise? Or are we apportioned a share of a larger state of being, part of a bigger whole that lives beyond our all too temporal boundaries and pre-exists before we struggle on our own desperate journeys? And what does it mean when we meet another portion of consciousness that seems to intersect our own, imbued with an uncanny sense of shared experience and understanding that seems to draw together by forces more powerful than reason? Every day I am conscious of knowing less than I did the day before. So I'm going to finish this off on a poem called The Digital Men, and I will give credit to Mrs. Connell, Susan Edwards, to introducing me to T.S. Eliot and the Hollow Men. And if you remember a couple of years ago, those of us who live in Alberta, we had this wicked cold February. It was like 30 days of minus 20 degrees Celsius. If you're Americans, that's not even 0 Fahrenheit. And it was cold day in, day out. And Vi and I have got the good fortune of being able to go to Maui every year, and we spend about 6 weeks there. I had to come back from some business. And I remember one morning I got up and I went for a run. It was really cold. And I was coming out of the path, and I just had this vision of really cold fingers on a keyboard. And I immediately got this impression, and I started writing later that day, and I actually wrote this poem on the plane going back to Maui a couple of years ago. So here we go, the digital men. Hubert, you're like this one. We are the digital men, lost in our devices, our eyes focused and fixed on our glass-cased universe, fingers aflutter, searching for content and data, interesting but meaningless. Our minds are set in worlds far away, in places with no here or there. We have friends, but no kindred spirits. contacts but no connections. We do not know noon or morning or evening. Night could be day or day could be night. It does not matter. The caress of a warm breeze does not touch us. The hue of the evening sun makes no impression. Our bodies are like rusty buoys, float but are secured in silted harbors of our self-appointed chains, weigh heavy and keep us from our perpetual ephemeral pursuits. Symbols without letters, letters without words, words without narratives, narratives without stories, stories without listeners. We are the digital men reduced to a 0-1 world. So Tim, for you people, Hubert's a real IT guy, so he can relate to that. So Tim, I'm going to turn it back to you for a couple minutes and then we'll carry on.
Sure, that's a perfect segue for my daily job, so I appreciate that. So if you can actually permit screen share, just to the comment earlier, I have Marilyn's picture of the farm. I can bring that up while I read my excerpt.
I don't know if I can. I don't know,
yeah,
Tim, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay. So okay. What Jerry wanted me to do was to read an excerpt of an essay that I did back in 1996. That's when our parents actually sold the farm, and it was just before they were having the final auction, and it was my opportunity to visit. And it was a contrast because at that time I was working for a company. I was spending a lot of time in the States, and I happened to be in like Manhattan that morning with meetings, and then I flew back to Toronto. I was supposed to go back to Ottawa, and I live in Ottawa, and I decided to do a side trip up to the farm, and it was a bit of a study in contrast, if you will. And from that, I wrote an essay about leaving the farm for the one final time. So I'm not going to read the whole essay. We can provide you the link afterwards, but I'll read an excerpt. It's very similar to what Jerry had described earlier on in the session, but it gives you a sense of my experience being like the younger brother, if you will, kind of almost like a generation apart, but having a similar or same experience. So the essay is called Goodbye Farm. The farm is no ordinary farm. Situated just north of the village of Leith and close to the shore of Georgian Bay, it has all the elements of paradise. The farm, 150 acres in total, is bordered on 3 sides by dense bush. The 4th side, which faces to the south, affords an unobstructed view all the way to Owen Sound. In the distance, amongst the shimmering tin barn rooftops, I can see the farmhouse where Tom Thomson grew up. The beauty of the landscape, which he began to appreciate here, and which he finally expressed in a form that became her national treasure, is the very same beauty I grew up with. I know exactly what he felt and what he wanted to express. I've seen his early works, paintings of the area, and he has captured the very same mood that I feel now. To the west, above the trees of the near shore and below the far shore, I can see the blue sliver of Owen Sound Bay. Further to the north, the sliver opens into Greater Georgian Bay and, with distant clouds, fuses with the sky. Here, it's the top of the world. I can see the entire world, or what really matters to me. The world needs to be no larger than what I can see. So there we go. I think that's a good conclusion to your first set, Jerry, and kind of rounds it out with our experience of growing up on the farm.
So coincidentally, Tim and I never collaborated on anything. And it's so interesting to hear how he perceived some of the very same things I did. And so I'm going to enter my second book called Yearnings. And I love the word yearnings because it's sort of alma de petit. It has sort of sounds like it feels. You yearn over things. And when you're growing up, and if you're at all aware of things, you're doing a lot of yearning, quite frankly. Yearning for achievement, yearning for your education, yearning for women, yearning for meaning. And so I thought it was a very appropriate title. And one of my, in one of the ways my life has been blessed, I was asked a couple of years ago to serve as the Honorary Console for the Kingdom of the Netherlands. So I'm officially the representative of the King of the Netherlands here in Northern Alberta. And our Consul General, Hank Snoeken, who I believe is on the call, gave me a little gift. He gave me this wrapped, and I knew it was a book, and I opened it up, and it's called The Honorary Console. And it's a hilarious book, actually. It's written by Graham Greene, a British writer. And it's set in a very peculiar place on the border of Paraguay and Argentina, and a very politically charged area. And the Honorary Consul was taken hostage. And the message of the book, well, he wasn't worth anything, so why did you take him hostage? They made a mistake. They were going to actually kidnap the ambassador, but they got confused. And the line that keeps coming up is, well, he's just the Honorary Consul. So I keep reminding Hank of this, that I'm just the Honorary Consul, so of no consequence. But in the book, there's a character who was in prison, and he was a former priest, and he turned into a revolutionary, and he was trying to write a poem, and he only had 2 lines. And these are the 2 lines. Death is a common weed. It requires no rain. And I was fascinated with that, those 2 lines. I thought, well, I'll help him out. So I jumped in. I wrote this poem. I call it Death, Heartache, Happiness, Life. Death is a common weed. It requires no rain, no prepared seed beds, a sure recipe for pain. Heartache is a sturdy thistle, thrives amidst soil or stone. Some fields have few, some have many, sure to hurt flesh and bone. Happiness is a field of clover, rich in texture, uplifts the heart. Thick green and the occasional thistle, new hope, a brand new start. Love is an elusive flower, fuel to restore the soul. Requires much sun and many a shower, broken pieces make them whole. Life is a never-ending miracle, full of mystery, no end of surprises. While the darkness may run deep, the sun surely rises. I'd love to meet Graham Greene and give him that, but I think he's passed on. And so I will carry on. Again, I told you one of my favorite poets is Robert Frost, and he wrote the famous poem, 2 roads diverged in the yellow wood, or the road not taken. And I had a friend who was struggling with what to do next. And so I said, well, referred to this poem. And then I thought, well, let me see if I can modernize it. So I wrote a poem called Which Path to Choose. So it's in the same structure and the cadence of his poem. Which path to choose, thick fog and dread. The view grows dim in many ways. I wish there was clear light ahead, but shapes and shadows appear instead, and patience call for clearer days. Some say the future's bright and bold, while others' views are less sanguine. You need not worry, I'm firmly told. Smooth sailing ahead. I'm not yet sold, deeply divided in thought again. What fields or woods should then I greet? Is there a path beyond yonder hill? Perchance a place midst glass or street. I turn my eyes, direct eager feet. Whate'er the place, I'll need strong will. So what to choose, green field or furrow? Will destiny reward my toil? Where there'll be joy or there be sorrow, but one sure way to shape tomorrow, seek, strive, and till the fertile soil. So I'm going to read a poem that Mrs. Connell likes a lot, Susan Edwards, and I wrote this last year, actually, about this time, and it just came out of nowhere. It's called Hidden Grief. We all carry hidden grief. Mostly it hides in the form of quiet whispers, deep in the recesses of somewhere. But then when most unexpected, it roars in pounding waves from a rising sea and crashes on the rugged shores of our weather-beaten despair. There's a whole story behind that, but we won't get into that. Now, I'll talk about Yearnings. This is a yearning that I wrote when I was about 18. This is my first summer back in Villanova, and of course, I got a girlfriend back. She's from New Jersey, but her name was Jackie, and I kept waiting for a letter from her. Finally did get one, but it took a long time. So I wrote something called Unsent Silence. And this is for those of you that remember what letter writing was all about. and mailboxes, and hence the, the picture, the open mailbox with nothing in it. Today I waited for a letter from you that did not come. So once again, I wait and contemplate the unsent silence that is perhaps intended silence sent. A lot of yearning in that one. So then I wrote, my son-in-law got remarried a couple of years ago. And many of us have had the joy of starter marriages, and hopefully got it more right the second time. And I wrote a poem called Padlocks and Keys. Life is a way of sealing your heart, dashed hopes, failed dreams, the coming apart. Padlocks are placed, no rooms left to let, no fresh air in, no sun rays to set. Walls moving higher, more bricks firmly placed, actions in actions, more memories erased, new ways to deflect, even more to distract, no moving forward and no coming back. And so life unfolds, the defenses are laid, months, years go by, no feelings displayed. All appears well, what's not good to see, and then unexpected comes one with a key. A question then rises, what path lies ahead? Tear down thick walls or keep them instead? No easy answers, but do not despair. Locks can be opened, sealed hearts can repair. I actually read that at my stepson's wedding, and I hoped it resonated. Certainly, a lot of it can relate to surviving bad relationships. Now, I'm getting a lot of noise interference. Has someone got a lot of noise going on?
Jerry, as host, you can mute everybody.
Yeah, so I'm told, but
Just go to your right-hand corner under view. You should have that power.
Well, I don't seem to have that command, but anyway.
If I can, I believe it's Lizzie's iPhone that's making the noise. That's what I'm seeing. And anyway.
Could Lizzie go on mute? Yeah, okay. Now even looking at this painting behind me.
Jerry, it's the Venerable Mrs. Connell here.
Yes.
I would just like to ask you to read your poems a little more slowly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm getting like Dylan Thomas, getting carried away.
Jerry, it's George. Only your high school teacher could step in and tell you that, right? I'm so glad we saw her. You can put us all on mute, and then you don't have that sound, but yeah, I'm on mute anyway.
But somehow, I don't think I'm in the right command. But
Jerry, go into participants, and you'll see everybody. And then anyone who's not on mute, you can just put them on mute.
Yeah. Okay. I wish I had my trusty techie beside me, but
Jerry, this is just so you know, this is really, really quite special. I'm sitting here with a glass of wine and tears in my eyes. It's really well done.
Thank you, George. Very much appreciate that. I am going to read a poem called Fence Post. And this was actually a very low point in my life. And it goes like this. Hello, no matter, never mind. I'm just a fence post. I have no feelings, been serving faithfully for years, but they're moving me out. Just heard the other day, it's all decided, all done. Yes, even the new guys down the line seemed to know that I was gone. I should have known. The surroundings around me started to change a few days back. New arrangements, new looks, a lot of things. No input from me. But I have no eyes. I cannot see. I have no ears. I cannot hear. I am a fence post. They're digging now. My base, a little worn by time and wear, is still strong. Perhaps they'll flip me over and set me in again, upside down. My base with new fresh air can do the job, and my top, no base, will last at least another 20 years or more. But I'm a fence post. I have no feelings. I do not think. I do not see. I do not hear. I'm being moved now, off to the side. It's quite the ride. By the way, my name is... Never mind. I actually wrote that in a business meeting. It was getting boring. And so I started scribbling away, and I showed my wife Vi. This is PV, pre-Vi, by the way. The original scrap of paper I wrote that on. She's chuckling away because she knows how bizarre I am. So I'm going to finish this one off on a poem I called, and this is a tribute to my track friends, but it's really a metaphor for anyone who lives, because we all have struggles. It's called A Runner's Life. A day most dreary with streaks of fading light, cedars groaning, shadows full in flight, maples bending against the deepening gray, yet I went running on that very day. Sheets of rain and brooding thunder clouds, biting winds fast forming icy shrouds, drifting snow, so hard to find the way, yet I went running on that very day. Heat on heat, sun burning bright above, the sky is still, no sign of lark or dove. No one said go, for surely you must stay, yet I went running on that very day. When the call comes for the finals in the sky, it will come. Ask not the reason why. I know not when, nor have I much to say, but I'll go running on that very day. And I'm going to finish off here, and then I'm going to turn it back to Tim on a comment on our crazy modern materialistic life in a poem I wrote about a year or so ago called Things We Don't Need. And hopefully through this period of COVID, we can reflect a little bit more on what's important and what we really don't need. So here we go. 16 lanes of traffic, 20 suits all dark, 40 dress shirts, 60 pair of shoes, 10,000 square feet of living space, endless realms of retail space, manufactured landscapes and synthetic parks, bicycle lanes and no bicycles, entitlements without obligations, dividends without investment, rights without duties, political rhetoric without consequence, vacuous leaders without leadership, loud voices with many voices, but saying nothing. Tim, over to you.
Okay, I'm unmuted myself. I presume you can hear me okay, Jerry?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so reflecting on your readings, what I've decided to do is read just an excerpt of one of my quote unquote journal entries in my book. You know, I don't want to flog it, but it's Tom Thomson, Journal of My Last Spring. Jerry has a whole box in his garage, so if you want one, just hit Jerry up. And if you want one, just send me an email, and we can always.
Tim, you've gone on mute.
Tim, you've gone on mute.
Oh, sorry. I don't know why I went on mute there again, but yeah, I thought what I would do, just to contrast what Jerry's been doing with his poetry and the personal reflections, is what I did was take my personal experiences and channel it through like a national icon, namely Tom Thomson. And I presume most of you are aware of Tom Thomson, the Canadian landscape artist, died tragically in his prime, 1917, at the age of 39. And he grew up literally, you know, next door to where we grew up. And so what I did, instead of writing, like when I decided to take the work that I did, I said, well, nobody really cares about me. Like they're more interested in a national figure. So I took my personal experiences and channeled it into a set of fictional journal entries. And so the one I'm going to read is set on April 3rd, 1917. Again, it draws from my personal experiences growing up on the farm, like going going into that bush where Jerry was talking about counting the cattle. And I channeled that into Tom Thomson in 1917 as if he was painting the sketches and the final months of his life. So this one's called April 3rd, 1917, Heading for the Hills. So, heading for the hills, I walked along Potter Creek. I crossed the tracks at Canoe Lake Station and kept north along Joe Lake shore until I was nearly at TP Lake. On the north side of a hill, I found a small ridge with birch trees casting shadows on the snow and earth. The different colors caught my eye. The reddish rock, damp earlier in the morning, was not freshly dried in the sun. There was a patch of wet earth and the deep blue shadows of the trees cast on the snow. These shadows are a mystic deep blue. You only see these types of shadows in the spring. It's an illusion of dispersion. From what I can tell, the blue comes from within the tiny crystals that make up the snow that has been beaten up by the strong spring light. It's similar to the blue from the sky scattered light, and it's like the blue of the blue jay feathers. Up close, their feathers are gray, but from far off, they're blue because the feathers scatter the light. Colors, illusion, or reality. Is there any difference? Behind these illusions, I could see a wedge of another blue in the distance, behind the birches in the foreground. It was the open water between Joe and TP Lakes, at a narrow point where the water was running fast, reflecting the warm blue of the sky and turning the lake a fearful cold blue. If you fell into that water, you'd be pulled under the ice and be dead in a minute. It's springtime. We'll soon be hearing words of those types of deaths in the park, usually from the lumber camps. And a month after that, when the ice is all gone and the water back down, the bodies will appear, either caught above a dam or found in the lake below. So, yeah, I just wanted to give you that entry where I've taken my personal experiences and instead of channeling it into poetry, I channeled it into a fictional account. So I just wanted to share that. So over to you, Jerry.
So just building on that, and this is for you, Betty Gray. This is, and again, I will attribute my thinking to the influence of Mrs. Connell, who introduced us to William Butler Yeats, Leda and the Swan. You might get arrested for that now, Mrs. Connell, for sharing that kind of provocative literature with young, impressionable students. But William Butler Yeats, famous Irish poet, wrote about two things. And the adage is, write about what you know. And he wrote about Irish history, Irish politics, and of course, the mythology behind both. And so at Christmas time, I was reflecting and I thought, what do I know? Well, I don't know much, to tell you the truth, but I know what it's like to stand in Leith at the church and look across the fields and look at where Tom Thomson actually lived. And so, Betty, just imagine me standing on the road there by the end of your laneway, or a little closer to the church where Thomson is actually buried. So this is a poem for Tom Thomson. O noble grave, what lies beneath, what secrets lie unstirred, what threads of flesh rest in this ground, whose bones are here interred. Across those fields it all began, harsh west winds, the sifting sand, the lonesome pine, the autumn hue, curious eye, a steady hand. We too have seen this pristine birch, heard smack of pounding waves, felt light of spring, the gloom of fall, the rustle of the leaves. But you have captured sight and sound, entwined in scenes sublime. While life is but a temporal state, your work transcends all time. Each passing year, your spirit grows, more praise and yet some chatter. The mystery of where your body lies, ergo, what does it matter? So that's standing on the road at Leith. I sent a book of poems to my good friend Gertie Reamer, who I believe is on the call, who lives in Guelph. We met some 40 years ago, and she's a very artistic, thoughtful type. And I sent her a book, and she emailed me back and she said, where do you find the time? And I thought, well, find the time. And I wrote this, it literally came into my head. How do you find the time to write? A friend once asked of me. I gave quick thought and then replied, the rhyme finds time for me. It comes in unexpected ways, a setting sun, a quiet breeze, the rhythm of a morning run, a fluttering leaf, the raging seas. Each day, new opportunities present, a sound, a scene, a conversation, so much fodder for the soul, the chance for new sensation. A deeper question does then arise. Do we create or just uncover? Do these musings pre-exist, our task but to discover? Methinks that it's a bit of both. The truth lies deep in yonder blue. Take pause each day to just reflect and let the rhyme find you. I'm going to finish up here. I guess we're getting close to the hour, and I think we'll keep the lines open for a few minutes afterwards for those who would like to comment or question. And Tim, I'll let you adjudicate that. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the world these days, and we've gone through some rough political times. And I was on a run. This is last September, and I was just finishing up. It was a lovely Sunday morning. And the question stuck in my mind, and I call this is a tribute to Leonard Cohen and Bob Dylan and Vi Becker. Nobody knows. Has every word been written? Has every song been sung? Has every thought been captured? Has every bell been rung? Don't let your heart run cold. Don't let your soul be sold. Let the light shine bright and bold. Let the truth be freely told. Has every rhyme been offered? Has every beat been struck? Has every web been woven? Have we all run out of luck? Don't let your heart run cold. Don't let your soul be sold. Let the light sun shine bright and bold. Let the truth be freely told. Are there hearts still left unbroken? Has every race been run? What secrets lie unspoken beneath the sinking sun? Don't let your heart run cold. Don't let your soul be sold. Let the light shine bright and bold. Let the truth be freely told. When will the clouds be parted? When will the doves fly free? When will the tears stop flowing? It'll be up to you and me. Don't let your heart run cold. Don't let your soul be sold. Let the light shine bright and bold. Let the truth be freely told. I'm going to finish with a poem that's somewhat provocative, and it's very much a reflection of what happened to our American friends here in January, February. And this is inspired again by William Butler Yeats, who did comment about politics. He was the one that wrote around the Easter Rebellion and termed the phrase a terrible beauty. It's a profound statement. But this is called Sailing to Armageddon. This is no country for the honorable young, where spirits falter, where truth hides its head, bluster on bluster, more lies upon lies, erosion of honor, the absence of good. Each day in its passing finds darkening skies at the service of self, no matter who dies. Where lies the virtue of peoples before? Where stand those who erased shackles of class, who laid careful pathways and once walked with pride, when law was embodied in one single soul and birthplace determined where one could reside? Now truth has no measure and justice denied. How can this country now find itself here? The land of lost promise, there's nothing for sure. Vote counts are debated, and who be the cause? Yet those over there, they have taken what's ours. They differ in race, we shall not endure. Our premise is false, but we shall secure. This is our country, this is our foreview. No rules, nothing matters. The strong man now wins. No matter the reason, we do what we've done. The boots of suppression, does anyone speak? Away with the Father, to hell with the Son. Together we sail for Armageddon. Pretty sobering. And maybe just a lighter touch. It's springtime. I've done a lot of driving, and this Daryl K will know this. Last summer, I spent the summer visiting every small town in Alberta, thanks to some duties I had with a board that I was on. And I have lots of time to think. And so I have a whole series of what I call vignettes by season. I'm just going to read a couple on spring because that's what we're in. The sun has crossed the center line, more light, more heat, more days sublime. The nurturing warmth prepares the earth, and seeds soon stir. New life bursts forth. And a couple weeks ago, you remember an icy, terrible day on a Monday, and I said, getting worried yesterday, the icy wind, bare trees asway, much cloud, no sun, a sky that's grim, dear spring. That's not the way to begin. Then, a ray of sunshine breaks through the gloom, might just be enough to make flowers bloom. It's bright, it's clear, it's calm, it's blue. The day bursts forth with life anew. Which way to go, which field to seed? A busy day for the sun, indeed. And finally, the sun is high, the sun is blue, the sky is blue, the fields are filled with a glorious hue. Spring is here, the earth doth shout. It would appear that you're about. So with that, I will say thanks. And Tim, if you want to field any comments or questions, be happy to respond. So thanks, everyone.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jerry. And I would presume you still have copies of your book. If people are interested,
oh, yes,
they could contact you, and you can throw a copy of mine in as well. Just
yeah, and we've got The Ecstatic Orphan, can be obtained either through Mrs. Connell,
okay.
Or myself, or Ginger Press in Owen Sound, the venerable bookstore for all the learned and wise in the Owen Sound area. So,
oh, that's great. So yeah, you feel free to add something to the chat, or we'll just open it up for discussion. And again, we're at the top of the hour, or just past, but like I don't have a hard stop, and I'm quite happy to hang out for the next while if anybody wants to make any comments, reactions, or just kind of join in the vibe. I really appreciate it, Jerry. Again, I was very moved by the poetry, and again, you know, I'm very honored to have a big brother like you, and yeah. So we'll leave it at that.
Tim, I'm very glad you clarified your position, because when you first started tonight, an hour and a bit ago, I thought you were a son of Jerry that I had never met. So this is good. I just want to say something. There's a wonderful expression, I think it might be Shakespeare, but I'm not sure, that says all men live lives of quiet desperation.
Oh, yeah, I know that phrase.
And there's so much in what you said tonight, Jerry, that says that. And by the way, for those that would say now all persons, you have to say now all persons, no, all men live lives of quiet desperation, Jerry. That was an unbelievable hour. I really enjoyed it. So just want to tell you that.
And George, for all of you, George was the printer of these books. And I don't think you even knew it was happening, George, because I didn't want to bother you about it.
Well, I wish you had. But the second thing is I have the first one on my desk, which I've read from front to back, but I have not received a second copy. So I'm a little bit stressed over that, really. I think I should have got at least one copy of it. But Jerry, this was a great, I'll turn it off so everybody else can hear, but this was really special, Jerry. I'm very emotional about it. It was wonderful.
Thanks, George. I have a third one ready to print soon. So we'll be back.
I hope you come back to West Canadian. Yes.
And can I put in a plug in for Tim's book? Tim's book about Tom Thomson is absolutely fascinating. And in fact, I started reading it and I called in sick the next day because I wanted to finish the whole thing. So there you go. It's a must read.
So Jerry, can I get, if we pay $45 like I paid for your poetry book, can I get a copy of Tim's as well? And
yes, yeah. I think you have both for a better price than that, Bob.
Jerry, can I ask one question? Cynthia, you said Cynthia was your high school.
No, Susan. Susan, would you say hello, Mrs. Connell? Susan Edwards, and she has a daughter. But
I don't see you.
Okay, Susan, over to you.
Oh, there you can speak
yes,
now.
Cynthia is my daughter. I'm at her place, so I'm the venerable Mrs. Connell.
But you must have been 12. You must have been 12 when you were teaching him English.
She was 13. And believe me, all the boys in high school knew Mrs. Connell because she was by far the best looking teacher there.
Hey, Jerry, I'll just jump in here for a moment. I just like to say that what I really enjoy about your poetry is a sense of feeling, sense of depth, and the soul that is incorporated into it. And it makes a difference to life. It takes away the mundaneness of life. And
That's
certainly
that's my good friend Ed Takas from Alliston, Ontario. And I was the first Canadian to go to Villanova. Ed was the second, and we are very close friends to this day.
Thank you, Jerry. And Tim, I certainly enjoyed your short story, and I do have your book, and I would give accolades to your book also. Very, very nice.
Great, great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else want to chip in before we call it a wrap?
I would like to say something. I'm Marcia. I'm down in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I lived in Nova Scotia for quite a while, and I still miss it. But I just want to say how kind of fresh I found your reading, how easy it was to listen, and how natural your language seemed. And also, many times, especially in the earlier part, it did remind me of Robert Frost's poetry. Not in a sort of copying way, but in a sort of soulful personality way. And that was delightful. So thank you.
Thanks, Marcia.
Yeah, if I can add to, like with my project, the early 20th century, I discovered or started to delve into a lot of the Confederation poets, Wilfred Campbell, Archibald Lampman, Duncan Scott, I believe it was, and William Butler Yeats was up around that time period as well, and T.S. Eliot. And I really drew a lot of inspiration from that time period, and it was really neat to see Jerry kind of channel that as well. I found, it was a kind of a, an interesting point of the modern age, and, the time of the telegraph and the newspaper, and there was still a sort of, you had to be concise and precise with your language just because it was so costly to transmit. And it's really nice to see that reflected in the poetry. And I really took inspiration from kind of channeling that time period and seeing it reflected in Jerry's poetry as well.
I'd like to add something, if I may. Jerry, knowing your poems on the page is one thing, but your giving voice to them adds a significant, not just coloring, but significant depth. And other than the fact that while I agree with the Venerable Mrs. C, you read a bit too fast, I think it was pretty clear the feeling came through in everything that you read. And thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Brad. Another very old friend of mine, running friend from Owen Sound. And very nice to have you on board this evening, Brad.
Jerry, I have a question for you.
Jerry,
go ahead.
You say, none of us want to be called your very, very old friends. Just friends.
Over to you, Carrie.
I thank you so much for your wonderful work and reflections of the land and all of your gaze towards your boyhood home. And I had this question where I wanted to know about the 31 cows.
Yes.
Was this a steady 31? Did it start as a higher number and you lost some? Or like, what was usually the target, and where were you in the sequence where the 31 happened?
Good question. We would know when we turn them out in probably early June, exactly how many. And every year it'd be a different number. But I can say this, and I was thinking about this, Carrie, we never lost one. So that particular summer it was 31. The next year it might be 26. But we knew exactly what was supposed to be there. And of course, when you have a thunderstorm, you always run the risk that one of them might have been struck. So we better go out and count them. At least have the satisfaction of knowing who's alive. So
you never lost one.
No, we never lost one.
Wow. I'm so glad to know more about that part. Thank you.
And if I could add, all the cows, the milking cows had names, and we knew them by names. I still remember Herfy and Daisy and Sharon 5 and Sharon 6. Like they all had individual personalities. We knew every single one. I think our herd always fluctuated between, there was 31 out in the bush, but usually we had somewhere around 98,
something
around
like that,
100 or so. So you had, well, exactly 23 milking cows, sometimes up to 25. And then you had the calves, you had the younger ones that were in the pens close by. But oh yeah, we knew exactly every single beast, every one. We knew them. Not only by number, but by name, but by character as well.
Jerry, I just have a quick question. I was thinking about this as I was reading through the book, and because, as you mentioned, our paths are fairly parallel. But did you guys have dogs? And it's funny because when I think back to my experience, and I don't express it the same way or as well or close to as well as you do, obviously, but did you have dogs like for the cattle, or what was your experience with pets on the farm?
We always had a dog. Early it was Nipper, and then we had a German Shepherd who got overly protective. His name was Roger, and we had to get rid of him. And I can tell you, it was one of the only times I've seen my father cry. We delivered that dog to the dog catcher in Owen Sound, and I was maybe 8 or 9, and I was pretty much resigned that the dog had to go because I had to hold it off. I had a friend over and we were playing, and all of a sudden the dog attacked my friend, and I held the dog off long enough for my friend to run in the house. But after that, the dog had to go, and I remember my father being very quiet, and then I looked over and he was crying. And he was a man that never showed any emotion for us growing up. And so that was really struck me. And then we got the world's most useless dog after that. He was just a lump of flesh that hung around and didn't do anything.
No, that was my rescue little puppy.
Yeah, that little Hummy. He was useless. The world's most useless dog.
Josephine Houndini.
Yeah.
Did you ever run with any of them though, Jerry?
No.
No?
No, the hound was around, and I was running, and that dog was so useless, couldn't go to the end of the lawn, let alone out the lane.
But it was a happy dog.
Our mother loved that dog. Yes, yeah. Our mother loved that dog. It was very sweet.
It was the run to the litter that you got from the market, right? I remember when you came home.
It was the last dog that I just took. Some guy with puppies was sitting there, and it was at the end of the market time where my sister and I would go to work every Saturday morning, and there was like one puppy left, and I don't know, back in those days, I'll take the puppy, and off I took it home, and that was that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, she was great. I remember we'd be hanging in the fields, and she'd manage to get to the field by the middle of the afternoon to say hi.
Jerry, thank you for this. I'm going to sign off, but thank you very much.
So long, George.
I really enjoyed it. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Jerry, it's Morrison.
Hi, Morrison.
Jerry, thanks a lot. I'm going to take off too. So thanks. It's been a good night.
Hi, Jerry.
Really appreciate you being there. Is that Sandra?
It is. I just so enjoyed this. And what's been more fun than anything is seeing all those faces like Morrison just now.
And you probably didn't know Mrs. Connell.
I did not.
You went to OSCVI.
I was in OSCVI.
That was the rival school.
That's right. It's been quite an evening. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm waiting for a book.
Okay.
Actually, I'll go to Ginger Press next time I'm in.
Okay.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Very great. Thank you, Jerry. Thanks.
Bye now.
That was great.
Good. Did you know that Tom Thomson died at 39?
Sure I did. That was really interesting. He drowned up in...
Oh, what, he died? How he died?
Well, just, if you're going to, I'll tell you all over again. He was drowned up in...
Okay, Jerry, it sounds like it was a successful wrap. If I presume you did the recording.
Yes, I've done that.
And I'm not so sure how it gets stored, but I wouldn't mind being able to see if we can figure out how we can post it for people that want to see it afterwards.
Oh, yeah, the microphone. Click on it.
Well, I just want to say thanks to everybody. It was so much fun. And as you can realize is that when I read this poetry, my head goes back to the actual time and place when I wrote. So it's quite a journey for me every time. And it's so rewarding to know that it speaks to others. Very much appreciate your interest and your feedback. And I'm looking forward to doing an event back in Owen Sound when things open up. That was the plan, to do one we did initial one in Leith in the fall of 2019. Tim and I were going to do something together in the summer of 2020, but obviously that didn't happen, nor will 2021 happen. But 2022 is down the road, and I'd like to do something in Edmonton one of these days as well. So we will let you know. And thanks to Mrs. Connell for your inspiration, the venerable Mrs. Connell. Thank you, Ruth, for those lovely vignettes. It brought me right back to being in Leith again, especially the shot of Georgian Bay was fantastic. And that was literally across the road from our farm. So it was part of our domain. So any final words from anyone? Sid, you're never a loss for words. I see you smiling, living in your Chatsworth home.
I have to tell you what a joy it is to get to know your dad, to see him get up each day and make his route around the neighborhood with his walker, determined after having survived a hip surgery and just a totally determined man. I see your determination in and through him. I love your mom, even though she's in Lee Manor, and how my mom was able to meet your mom. I love her name, Chica. It was a wonderful, wonderful meeting between your mom and my mom, as they spoke Frisian as they only could, and the language was so incredibly intimate as they shared memories and names of people whom they loved. It's just been a real joy to get to know your folks. And I know there will come a time, Jerry, when the Lord will take them home, and you will come home, and your words will speak to the people who are listening. And I think when I hear you and Tim and your life story, I see so much of the fruit of their labor in the lives that the two of you live and share.
Thanks, Sid. And for those of you who don't know Sid, Sid is the pastor of the church that my parents go to in Owen Sound. And Sid and I met actually when he was initially a pastor in Guelph back in the mid 80s. And so we had some good times together. We had some great times together. And did I MC your wedding? I think I did. Yes.
Yes,
1989?
1988. I think 88.
Yes. So, well, please say hello to your lovely bride of now 33 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Jerry, I would just like to let you know that Bob was by my side for your presentation and loved every bit of it. And I hope Mrs. Connell will not take this the wrong way, But Bob just looked up at me and said, Jerry is too intelligent. And that is just an example of how Bob regards you and your incredible capacity for everything. We absolutely loved it. And we are so thrilled to have your 2 books. And Tim, I am going to ask for one of yours. And you also did an outstanding job tonight. What a family. Thank you.
Thanks, Gay.
Great. Thank you.
Any final comments from anyone? And Ruth Lovell, I know you're a woman who chooses her words carefully, but when you do choose them, people listen.
Okay. I just want to say, Jerry, that I really hope that 2022 sees you back in Leith, and I would be more than happy to welcome people and to do whatever you ask of me to do that day. This has been fabulous, but there's something about being in your whole, well, where you grew up and where all these, so many of these experiences refer. That's special too. So we'll look forward to that.
Thanks. And thanks again for those lovely clips. That was wonderful.
It was fun to do it. And I knew your home. And if I'd known the people who were living there, I would have gone to the door and asked if they minded. But this isn't the time that you can do that with COVID. So
right.
I had to stay at the end of the laneway. But you're right, it was a fabulous property, unbelievable property. And I wish I could have gone right to the door. Yeah. Wonderful night, Jerry. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Well, shall we say good night?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody. And thanks again.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye now.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.